We're at episode 73 already of the Syncrets To Success podcast. For those who are just finding this podcast, I am a music composer and producer. I've worked on music for Disneyland, different museum exhibits, including National Geographic, Smithsonian. I have music placed in the current season of Catfish at the time of this recording, almost on like every episode. I have music placed on different documentaries, composed music for a film called Hemisphere that is now streaming on Tubi, Amazon Prime Video, and Google Play, and some other things that are in the works. And of course, actually, the most recent placement, I don't think I've talked about it yet on the podcast. I just landed the trailer for the promo for Survivor, the season finale of I want to say it's season 46, if that's true. Man, that's insane. So yeah, things are happening in the sync space for me. And also, I'll do another episode about my recent BMI statement, where I have the largest BMI statement that I've received so far in my career. So things are sort of going up on this upward trend in the sync space. And that is because I am putting out a lot of music, and that's what this episode is going to be about. Quality versus quantity. Is there a way to do both? Do you have to focus on one or the other? Before we get into that, I have to mention that this podcast is sponsored by ASTS. Shout out to ASTS for providing great sounds for music creators like me and you to use in our music productions. And I'm actually doing this episode from work. I work full time, which is part of the story that I'm going to share today when we talk about the quality versus quantity. And I work full time in the corporate world, so I have to balance that with family life. I have a wife and two kids. Our daughter's she actually has graduated from high school. She's going to college in a few months. So balancing all of that and talking about quality versus quantity. So what sparked this conversation is I made a post yesterday on LinkedIn, and you can go to LinkedIn. You can find me, Marcus Manderson, on LinkedIn. You can see the post where I shared a recent album that was released with a library that I work with, and that album I created in about one day, and I posted on the LinkedIn post. I made this album in about a day, and thanking the library for the opportunity. And there was a comment from another great person in the sync space, Eric, and I believe Eric, yeah, and he mentioned that he doesn't really advocate for quantity over quality, and I was making the statement that I have executed on both, and I'm able to provide great quality and quantity at a rapid rate. And of course, and if you've watched past episodes of this podcast, I've mentioned that I don't really advocate for working fast for other people, but that's how my workflow is, and I've been able to perfect that with different templates and things, and some of the things you've seen on actually this podcast, where you've seen me go live and create music. So this LinkedIn post really sparked this episode, and I want to just dive in on that question. Is it possible to maintain quality while producing music quickly? That depends on the definition of quality. Of course, it helps when you're working with libraries. They will tell you if your music is up to par or not. And of course, the album that was released with this library, it was released. I made it in a day, and they accepted it, and it was released. And this library in particular, I've created several albums for them, and all the albums I've made for them, I've created in 1 or 2 days. Again, I do not advocate that for other people. This is how I create music. This is my workflow. Part of it is because, as I mentioned, I have a wife and kids. I have a corporate job, and everyone has their own story. But for me, I'm able to execute and create music quickly, even when I get briefs that I'm working on last minute. And things like that. But the common perspective is that you should focus on quality, of course. If you can do quality and quantity, very few can. I believe I'm one who can, to the point where I've had to work rapidly within 30 minutes making custom music for clients, Fortune 500 companies, on the spot in a recording studio. 30 minutes, 1 hour, we didn't have a track done. All right, we got this done. Let's move to the next, to the tune of creating sometimes over the course of 2 days, 30, 40 tracks for corporate clients. So it is possible. It's just, I think there's a mentality that a lot of people have that is like, hey, just don't do it. But for me, it works out. I get paid to do it. And of course, the album for this library, the success and tractions of these albums, like one of them is what got placed in Catfish the last season. A lot of the tracks, actually one album that I did last year, I did that album in about 1 or 2 days. 9 of the 10 tracks that I made on the album were placed in across the entire season of Catfish, which contributed to me getting one of the largest BMI statements that I've gotten today. Actually, the largest BMI statement that I got today. So for me, the quality is there, the placements are there. The trailer that I landed for Survivor, I made that track. It wasn't an album, but I made that track in about maybe 5 hours. It was a trailer track, but it landed on the promo trailer for Survivor. Again, this is just my workflow currently, and I do want to get to the point where I can focus more on building out a track, maybe over time, but I'm not there yet because my schedule isn't there yet. I don't do music full time, so I might only have 2 hours or 3 or 4 hours a day to make music. So I have to do as much as I can with that allocated time that I allocate. And what does sacrifice is sleep. I don't get a lot of sleep, for better or worse. I would love to get more sleep. I don't hate sleep, but the passion is music. So I have to work, pay bills, take care of family, have a wife and kids. Like I said, our daughter's going to college. Our son will be graduating in 2 years, so we have college things to worry about. So I'm figuring out this whole lane of making quality music for clients. And the importance. Hey, Anthony, thank you for tuning in. Feel free to drop a question in the comment. I'll have about 10 more minutes, and I got to actually go get to work. But for me, the importance of perfecting my workflow, creating templates, and figuring out how to produce quality music, part of that comes from playing in church, where I played in church. I'm a piano player and organist, Hammond organist. I'm a Hammond artist. I played in church for over 25 years, almost 30 years, grew up playing in the church. And some of those cases, we had to learn some of the hardest music. Look up any James Hall song, Richard Smallwood, which is more like classical stuff. We had to learn like Ty Tribbett stuff, so contemporary gospel music, but and then learning like 10 to 15 of these songs every week. Sometimes we would get the song the night before, Saturday night. The choir director messages the musicians and says, hey, we're switching the lineup. We're going to do this song tomorrow. And now we got to learn a whole new song, even though the choir didn't practice it. That's a whole other story. So that happens. Sometimes it's like Sunday morning, like, oh, we're going to do this song. I was like, I don't even remember how to play that song. So now I got to listen to it on like YouTube or find a recording of it on Apple Music or Spotify, and then try to remember how to play it so that we can play it in like 30 minutes for the service. So learning how to play some of the best music that's been created like within 30 minutes, and now going to create like some of the best music that I can create, within 30 minutes to an hour. I think all of that plays a part. And then of course I talk fast. I listen to music fast. I listen to podcasts and things fast. But despite the quick production time in my case, the music that I'm creating is getting signed. It's getting placed shortly after creation. The Survivor was 3 weeks after I made that track. That was placed on that Survivor trailer. And then some of it, of course, I have tracks that I've made that haven't got placed. So I'm just making a lot of music. It also helps me to identify where my weak points are. Like, it might take me some time to create like an EDM track. I'm not a perfectionist in the EDM space, so I don't focus on creating EDM, but I did learn that I can make trailer music. I learned that over the last few years. I've learned that I can make rock music. I've learned that literally over the last month, where I had to create rock music for another Fortune 500 client. So I don't typically make rock music, but I executed on that with the team that I work with, and we executed on that and knocked it out. So for me, it's the luxury. I don't have the luxury to spend weeks on an album, or I don't allocate the luxury to spend weeks on an album, because part of it is I do work with way too many libraries. I'm scaling that back. I've mentioned that before in the podcast. Over the last 2 years, I probably work with about 20, 30 libraries, including sync and trailer libraries, but I'm scaling that way back. I want to get to at least the top 3 to 5, including the one that I mentioned on LinkedIn that I'm going to continue working with because I really like the company. They really are getting placements for me. So no, I don't right now have the time, or I won't allocate the time to spend weeks or months on an album unless I'm collaborating with someone. But if it's something I'm doing personally, I want to have it done and move on to the next within at least a couple of days. The most during the pandemic, I was focusing on one album a week, which is pretty good. But sometimes it's like I just lock in. It's like, okay, let me get this album done within 1 or 2 days. I literally sometimes can't sleep until I finish this project that I committed to for a library. And of course, if there's a brief related to it, then there's a deadline. But yeah, there's just, for me, there are some benefits of creating quality music quickly, which when I happen to be in the studio, which I didn't see this, getting into sync, but now when I happen to be in the studio with an artist or a brand or an A&R or a songwriter or whatever the case is, and they're like, let me hear something, make something on the spot. It's like, okay, am I going to sit here and be like, oh, no, hold on for about 7 hours while I make this beat? No, it's like they want to hear something within like 5 minutes. If they give you that, 10 minutes, they want to just hear the vibe and start writing and start vibing off of the being in the room. Now, if I'm on my own, I can allocate, different times, but you have to be able to do both. You have to be a chameleon in this music space to be able to maximize your potential, your earning potential. And that's what I'm building right now, the brand. A lot of libraries I work with, they do say you make music fast. You make quality music fast, music that's getting signed. So that maybe is my thing. Maybe that's no one else can do it, but I thought that's what people did in this space. And people that I've grown up watching. I'm in Virginia. I'm a Virginia producer. I grew up watching Timbaland and Pharrell, and these guys are making beats. I didn't watch them in person, but like videos I found on YouTube, movies, and I've seen them like they're making beats, 20 minutes. It's like a hit. Like, they just, you got the vibe going, and that's it. Literally to the point where a couple years ago I was able to connect with Timbaland. He listened to one of my beats, and he was like, "Yo, this is dope." I gave him like a 2-minute opus. He's like, "Just take this first like 8 bars, and that's the whole song." I was like, "Yo, that's crazy." Now I got like 2 separate songs. I literally just had a chat with Danger Hands a couple months, about 2 months ago. Talked to Danger Hands on the phone. Had the dude's number. I've been following him for years. His beats are insane. Another Virginia producer, Timbaland's protege. So this is just. I can get to that question a little bit, Earth Tone. Let me get through. I'm gonna get through my notes for this quality over quantity. All right. So provide examples. So this is what has led me to work with these brands is being able to create music quickly. And I know there's incredible people like Sides, who's actually releasing a great course on how you can connect with brands. I actually should take that course. Shout out to Sides. How you can connect with brands and work with them directly. And that's sort of one of my unique selling points. I was going to say USP is being able to go to these brands and say, "Hey, I can work fast." Or the music that I made for Disneyland. This wasn't even part of me like trying to build, make it fast or anything. I just wanted to get it done and knock out an opportunity with Disneyland. I've shared this story before. I had the opportunity to compose music for Disneyland, and I forgot what episode it is. I shared it in an episode. I also shared it in some interviews. And I had a meeting with the people at Disneyland. I got to get to this meeting. I'm about to be late, but such is life. I had a meeting with the people running this attraction at Disneyland. They're revamping Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. It's an attraction that tells a story of Abraham Lincoln's story, and they wanted to add in a video showcasing Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, their story, and how they work together. They wanted music for this video. I had the meeting with the team. They were like, "Hey, we know you won't have." I had the meeting on a Friday. This was 2 years ago, 2022. It was in like September, October. Actually, August or September. They were like, "We want the music. We know you're not gonna have the music done by Monday, but we're gonna have a run through with the director and Disneyland team on Monday." I was like, "Okay, cool." I told my wife after that meeting on that Friday. I said, "I'm not going to sleep this weekend. I'm going to knock out this music this weekend for Disney." And it was a high risk, high reward type thing. That weekend, I focused on creating music. It was like a 15-minute video intro to this attraction at Disneyland. I knocked out that music, 15 minutes of music that weekend. Monday, I sent it to them like Sunday night, Monday morning. They're like, "What is this?" I was like, "This is the music that you requested." And I literally, they were giving me like 2 months to work on it. And they were like, "This is like insane." And I was like, hopefully it works. They responded, I think same day. They were like, "This is it, basically." I think there are some edits and things I had to do. Of course, they edited the video a little bit, so I had some edits, but I was basically done with the core idea within a weekend of working with Disney. Now I'm listed as a Disney vendor, a Disney composer. I have credits, theme park attractions. So it's just, like I said, some people working at that fast doesn't work, or they're just not interested in it. For me, it's what separates me from the pack, I guess, which I didn't realize because, like I said, I thought everybody worked like that. Okay, let me get through some of these points here. Eventually, I do want to get to the point where I do spend time. I have time to spend, weeks on a single album, or maybe I can spend days on a track. I'm just not there yet, and maybe I'll never get there because of the upbringing I had musically, where I had to learn music for church. A Black Baptist church playing some of the best music in the world with some great musicians Sunday after Sunday. So maybe I'll never get to the point where I'll spend days on a track, unless I'm collaborating with an artist or something. But I can do that if I have to, but I can also work at speed and at tempo. And again, once I do this full time, I'll be able to shift focus differently. I'll be able to focus differently when I can focus full time on music. I'm ready for this one big placement that can take care of like my job, have the bills paid at least for 6 months, then I'll be good to go. A year would be great. A part of it becomes time management, reflecting on how much time do I have to allocate to this. I don't sleep a lot. Again, I do not advocate not sleeping. You need sleep. I need sleep. I just don't get enough of it because I can't sleep unless I work on music. I literally cannot fall asleep unless I'm working on music. So balancing the commitments of work here, of music, of life. But I do aim to reach to a point where I can focus on music full time and maybe allocate more time to it. I'm not saying I will. I probably won't. But at least I would have the option when I'm able to do it. Let me see. Do I have anything else I wanted to mention about this? Uh, I think that's pretty much it. Shout out to the library. You can go to LinkedIn. You can see what library I'm talking about. I don't know if I mentioned it on this podcast, but one of the best libraries I like working with. Again, it is a minor black-owned library, so I like working with black-owned libraries. I like working with libraries that I can talk to the owner. I can literally call the owner of this library. I literally just called him. It was his birthday a couple days ago, so that might help you decide what library it is. But I talked about it on LinkedIn, and it's hard to get into the library. The way I got in, shout out to Mr. Watt here. There's a whole story there. Mr. Watt connected me with Nelson K. Johnson, who connected me with this library. So I've talked about that story in the podcast, also in some other lives. I don't have time to go into it right now. I'll reshare it over time, of course. But yeah, so yeah, shout out to that library. And of course, once the library's happy, I'm happy. Like they literally, I make them an album a day, or I've made them an album in a day. I make albums I made for this library, I make in a day. So when they reach out to me and say, hey, the music supervisor for Catfish really likes this album you did, can you give us 2 more volumes? Yeah, that's only 2 more days. I think for that one I spread it out across maybe 3 or 4 days. But again, I'm like, hey, you got to strike while the iron's hot, and I can't. If a music supervisor for a show is liking my music, I can't just sit back and be like, oh, I'll get it to you in a month. By then they're done with the show. They probably work on another show. They probably forgot about whatever I was doing. So for me in my mind, I got to strike while the iron's hot. Now, I can send it to them, and it could take them 3 or 4 months to listen to it, but at least my part is done. I send it to them. I'm on to the next. I've done 20 more albums since then. So this is how I think. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe it's right. Maybe it's not wrong. Maybe it's not right. Maybe it's right for me and wrong for you, which could be the case in a lot of stuff. All right, but for me right now, I have to focus on what I can do to maximize my family time, because our daughter, this is the last summer our daughter has. Actually, she's working, which is crazy. I'm coming home. I'm like, how was work? She's asking me how was work. I'm asking her how was work. She's working now. She just graduated from high school. She will be going to college in a couple months. This is our last summer with her, so I had to spend as much time with her as possible. And of course, our son, who's going to be a junior this year, he only has a couple more summers left. So once you have kids, you start to count down. Your time is based on how much summers you have left to spend with them before they leave the house and they leave the nest. So balancing the personal commitments with personal life, with music, and integrating them together. And I've mentioned in the past, again, this is, you can go, again, you can check out the LinkedIn post, see my comments. Maybe, like I said, maybe I was right, maybe I was wrong, maybe I'm wrong for you, right for me. But the comment that was mentioned, like, hey, I usually don't tell people to create music fast. It's quality or quantity. Well, there's a way to do both. I figured out a way to do both. And as Mr. Watt's mentioning, run your own race. Every race is different. Like, some of us aren't even on the same track. So it's like, how can I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you what I've done, what works for me. That might work for you, but it might not work for you. You might find a better path for you. You might find a better path that works for me. It's like, oh, I never thought about that. Let me try that real quick. And I think that's just life. We try different things, we figure things out, and sometimes we learn the hard way. Sometimes we learn what people we should be working with and not be working with. Sometimes people will tell us from their experiences. So it does help, because again, you can listen to this podcast and I might say 100 things. Then you might listen to another podcast and they'll say 100 things that contradicts all the 100 things I said. None of us are right. None of us are wrong. We just are, I guess. But yeah, I do emphasize, I work quality and quantity at a fast, rapid rate, tempo. Again, you've seen in some of the workshops I've done, some of the lives I've done, the music production things. I'm actually working on a community right now. I might launch it this week, working on a community where people can join, and it'll be a membership where you can pay a monthly membership, and I will be working on music live for that community. You won't have to pay for the workshops or anything. And we'll do some meetups probably at least monthly, but I might try to do every 2 weeks at least on Zoom. You can ask questions. You can ask me about libraries I'm working with, how am I making certain tracks. So I'm going to launch that community. I want to launch it. I was going to do it July, but I think I'm going to launch it early and try to focus on some things sooner than later. So stay tuned for that community, and you can bring questions. You can ask me about whatever you want to ask me. If you want to ask me about AI, let me see. There was a question about AI real quick. Earth Tone says, are you concerned with companies using AI for syncing? Most of the companies, libraries I work with have put in their agreements that they do not allow generative AI, meaning you cannot use AI to create music. I do use AI for mastering. I've used the Logic Stock AI mastering. I mostly use Ozone, and then I have a whole mastering chain. Maybe I'll show that within the membership that I'm going to start. You can see my mastering chain. I've also shown it in the workshops I do, creating music, producing music, how I master these tracks. But I basically have a chain of about 5 mastering plugins that I choose between. One is Master Plan by Music Hack. One is Ozone by Isotope. One is God Particle by Cradle Audio, and there's one more that I can't think of right now. But I have a chain, or Lursen Mastering by IK Multimedia. I have all these in a chain, and I just choose one of them. And then I have a chain plugin at the top that I use. I believe it's Skullfoss by Sound 3. Then I plug in at the bottom, which is Sonic's Oxford Inflator, to sort of bring everything out. And then I choose between one of those four in the middle. Very rarely do I use the Logic Stock Mastering, but I was working on a track yesterday. I think I posted it on my Instagram live. So you can go to my IG live until I delete it and see that post. I was working on a pop track, and my mastering chain wasn't working, so I had to go to the Logic Stock because that was working, obviously. But my ozone was just crapping out. So I was just like, I got to get this done. Again, with quality, you also want to make sure you have a backup plan, because if the plugins crap out, what's your backup plan? Okay, let me just do the Logic Stock Mastering, or let me reboot the computer. You just want to make sure you have a backup plan. But for AI, most of the companies I work with have put in their agreements, you cannot use generative AI to generate music. They will not accept AI, and of course, it's an honor policy. Some music supervisors I've seen clearly state that they will not, at least not intentionally, place AI created music. There's been a lot of talk from people mentioning that they will not, at least in their course of their career, advocate for using AI. But yeah, I might even do, maybe in the membership, I'll show how you can use AI, or how I have used AI, maybe to help come up with ideas. I beta tested a lot of AI stuff for some plugins. So maybe I'll share some of those platforms. And of course, I use ChatGPT for like text, and I use AI for video, for audio, or for images, not audio. I use AI for images, generating like cover art for music and stuff. Anyway, this is the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. This actually ended up going longer than I thought it was. But while quality is definitely paramount, I believe that it is possible to have both quality and quantity that you can create at a rapid rate, because I'm seeing that in my career. And as Mr. Watt mentioned, run your own race. Every race is different. For you, it might be, it might take you a month to make a track, but that track might, be a 5-figure placement for you. So if you're making that every month, then more power to you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to those who are sharing your thoughts, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, because it helps me create more content, and we can have that dialogue and that discussion, and I can, see if I have to adjust my thinking, because I'm open. My goal is to never be so close-minded that I'm not open to other perspectives and other ideas. But my purpose in life, because I was mentioned on the LinkedIn post, the person mentioned is like, what is the purpose of creating, music fast? And I stated, everything I stated basically this episode, time, things like that. Family. I believe, and I've mentioned this before, my purpose in life is to do what God put me here to do, and to serve the people that God put me here to serve. Like I said, I grew up in the church, and I believe in God. Not saying you have to believe in God, whatever you believe in. But I believe that I'm here to serve people, and to do whatever God put me here to do. I might not even know what that is. At one point, it was playing in church. Maybe that was my purpose, to play in church for almost 30 years. I don't personally. I have some, of course, some things about that I won't mention in this episode. But right now, I believe my purpose is to serve the clients with the music that I can create at a fast level, and maybe that's the talent that God gave me, to create music fast, that clients are accepting, that are getting signed, that are getting placed. And one thing I'll mention, that I'll get out of here. The goal for me and my music is not to get it signed to a library. That's great. That's like step one. The ultimate goal is to get the music licensed to a TV show, a movie, a video game. If it's for an artist, the goal is to get it on the album for the artist. Maybe get the single, which would be great, or one of the singles. But the goal is to get the music out to the masses, because you get it on. You can still get music signed to a library and on a album that's released by the library, and it just collects dust for years. I have a lot of music collecting dust, but I also have a lot of music getting placed. So finding those libraries that will help get the music placed, and then to the point now that I'm actually focusing, I'm shifting focus now away from libraries. I have a huge directory of music supervisors, and maybe I'll share how I built that directory using some AI platforms. Actually, a lot of maybe not AI, but a lot of technology platforms to get connected with music supervisors, in addition to the events, Sync Spotlight, Sync Music Success. There's a conference, actually might be doing 2 or 3 more conferences before the end of the year. NAM, AES, hopefully South by Southwest next year, but going to these conferences, putting on panels at these conferences, because I can't make it to every conference. There's a conference almost every month. I can't make it to all these conferences. So my goal is to bring something to the world's biggest conferences, NAMM, AES, South by Southwest, and I can execute on these panels. You've seen the reaction. You can go back to the episode. I forgot what episode. A couple episodes ago, where I've done my recap of NAMM this year. And what's crazy is I did share this in maybe on a live. One of the panels I hosted for NAMM this year, the programmer for South by Southwest was in that room. I've been trying to reach out to him for the last 2 years. And when I followed up with him after NAMM this year, he's like, yeah, I remember, man, you've been emailing me. And I had a chat with him, and he's giving me the process of how to get to South by Southwest. So there is, there is, you just never know who's in the room. You never know who's watching. Even when I post these videos, it might only get 5 or 10 views, but you never know who one of those views could be. And I have a whole other episode about that, how I connected with one of the world's biggest audio engineers because of a video I put that had like 50 views. And he was one of those views, and now I'm part of his community. His name is Ken Lewis. He just mixed, I think he has a couple credits on Taylor Swift's last album. He mixed all of Kanye stuff. Not all, he mixed on every Kanye album before the gospel era. Has over 100 gold and platinum records to his name. Okay, I gotta get out of here. Let me get through these comments. Mr. Watt, yeah, appreciate it, man. Let's catch up soon. Sebastian says, is that still considered independent artists using those libraries? Let me know. I don't know if I understand the question, Sebastian. Independent artists can get into Sync. If you are independent, you can definitely get into Sync. If you're interested, again, like I said, I'm going to launch a membership soon, which I will say, I hate to say that it's affordable or inexpensive, because what's affordable to someone is not affordable to someone else. So I hate when people say, oh, it's really cheap. You don't know my budget, man. Even if it's $10 a month, you don't know my, but it won't be. I know some that are like $100 a month, which, maybe that's cool for them, but not everyone starting out is at that level. So I won't be starting out at that level. I might advance to that level at some point, where people have to pay $100 a month. But starting out, of course, usually when something launches, the best way to get in is at the launch period, because usually that's the cheapest way to get in. So stay tuned for that. But I'm going to try to interpret what you mean, Sebastian. Independent artists can get into Sync. They just have to find the right Sync libraries to get into. If you are signed to a publishing deal or admin, or if you're signed to a label, independent label, just check your agreements, check with the label, see what they will allow you to do, because not all of them will allow you to sign those deals with libraries and get into Sync. They might have different arrangements for your music. So just check with what agreements you have. I have a meeting later today, just off of another library. That I sent some music into, and it's a big. It was an opportunity to send something to a producer who's big in the K-pop space, and he liked some of the stuff I sent in, and I have a meeting with them later today while at work, so don't tell anybody. But that's what I'm trying to do. It's like I'm trying to pursue the passion while I have to work, because I got to pay bills, got to take my wife. We've been blessed. My wife's been a stay-at-home mom for 17 years. But bills got to get paid, so I got to figure this thing out. And thank you for enjoying the journey. Maybe I've shared some of the downsides of things, in some past episodes. It's not all wins. It's sometimes it's lessons and failures, and maybe I'll share another one of those, in the next episode or in a future episode. But it's not all roses. So yeah, but you got to smile through the pain, because what good will crying it is. Like, let me just figure out the next, how can I get to that next step? And when you have the sort of the traction that I'm seeing with the music, when I have the clients that I have, even the ones that I can't talk about because of NDAs, it's like, can I really, like, this would help me in my career, but I can't talk about working with you guys. It's just like, yeah. Well, it's like, can you at least refer me to your friends so that I can get more work? So yeah, there's just a lot of things. A lot of people work in the music, that there's a lot of things that we do that we can't talk about. There's things that are in the works that we don't know, what God has planned, that might never come out, or it might come out, 20 years later. You're like, oh, I forgot I even did that. And it's like, oh, I did do that. And you hear it's like, man. Or I hear stuff that I made that comes out, years later. And I'm just like, I don't even like the way it sounds, but it's like, hey, it's out there, it's making some money and good. But you learn. And then there's some stuff that I made that I hear and I'm like, oh, that's dope. What was I thinking when I made that? I need to make more of this. Yeah. So I make music fast. I made music this week. I'll make a post maybe on Threads or something. I made music this week for a female girl group. One of their singers connected with me on LinkedIn, so I made them 3 songs. I want to work on an EP with them. I made 3 songs yesterday, epic cinematic hip hop music for another library that I work with. They're looking for epic producers to work with. They already know I make that music, but I just submitted the proper way to get into that library. And I have to go through my Logic sessions to see what else I made this week. But my goal is to make 1 track a day. And if it takes me 4 hours or if it takes me 30 minutes, mission accomplished. And then if I can make more, great. Um, yeah, but the purpose, my overall purpose, is to do what God put me here to do and to serve the people that God put me here to serve. I got to get out of here. I got to get to work. My goal today is to get to work and not get fired. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for the support. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Again, check the links. I'm going to have to edit this video so I can add the link to the description. I'm going to launch the community. Maybe I'll drop that in the description here. Check out ASTS, who sponsors this podcast. Check out some sounds they have. They also have a discount code where you can check out their plugins and sounds and things. Check out Disco, which is the preferred platform by most music supervisors and sync libraries and sync agents to share your catalog. I'll have a link in the description. Check out my Facebook group, Syncrets To Success. That will also be the name of my private community membership that I'll be launching soon. So again, I will include the link down in the description where you can join in on live sessions where I'm making music, ask questions, things like that. So stay tuned for that. Just check out all the links once I have it posted up. It'll give me a few minutes. I got to actually do some stuff for work and then I'll post it up. Be safe and be well, everyone. All right. Peace.